Hello and welcome to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera Season 2. This episode is being powered by Perpetual Buzz Experiences. They are an artist representation company with three very basic but lofty goals. They're the launchpad for indie artists, helping them leverage success in the best possible manner. They also help fund social causes and ensure that people have a great time throughout the process. So be sure to check them out on www.perpetualbuzz.com. Speaking of my guest today is none other than Bruce Cockburn, who is a Canadian singer-songwriter and a guitar player. He's garnered numerous awards and accolades throughout his career. He's won nearly 13 Juno Awards, including Songwriter of the Year, and he was inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame and the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. His musical genius has been widely recognized across the world. His albums have achieved gold and platinum status, and he has performed at some of the most renowned festivals and venues worldwide. Beyond music, Bruce Cockburn's activism and humanitarian work has garnered admiration and respect in various parts of the world. His remarkable achievements and lasting impact makes him a revered figure in the musical industry. So, without any further ado, I'm delighted to welcome my guest for today, Bruce Cockburn. Hi, Bruce. How are you? And which part of the world are you in right now?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And I'm in San Francisco where I live.
Uh-huh. And what's special? What's happening on Sunday morning?
Not much so far. It's just after 10 a.m. and nothing much is happening. My family is asleep still, and the street outside is quite sleepy. Also,
Right.
it's overcast. It's cool. It's quiet.
So you're the only early bird across the street who's up at this hour.
It seems like it. There are probably people who got up earlier to go to church, but I didn't do that.
All right. All right. So I'm your host, Aditya Veera, and I'd like to welcome you on Stalwarts of Music. Thank you so much for joining in and taking time out. It's an absolute privilege to have you on the show, sir.
Well, thanks for saying that. It's nice to be with you.
Incredible. So let's get started with our agenda today, and I have a couple of very interesting questions coming your way.
Okay.
All right. So, Bruce, how did your cultural background or heritage influence your earliest musical memory and the type of music that you were exposed to when you were a little boy?
Oh boy, the first music that I remember being exposed to was classical music, European classical music. My dad thought that because I was the firstborn, and
Okay.
the firstborn gets more attention than the subsequent siblings. So I got the benefit of my dad exposing me to what he thought was, important cultural elements, including classical music.
Okay.
He himself was not a big fan of classical music, particularly. He liked, and he and my mom liked musicals. They liked Gilbert and Sullivan. They liked Broadway musicals, and they listened to a lot of that, and they liked the pop music of their youth, Bing Crosby and people like that. So that's what I heard growing up when I was very young. I mean, this is before I was even in school. But and then when rock and roll came along in the late 50s, I was completely captivated by that. So that became far more influential than what I'd heard before. But then when I got serious about music in my teens, I rediscovered classical music, and I got interested in jazz, and I was studying basically jazz composition on my own, and some musical theory with a teacher, and so all of these things kind of mixed together and I also discovered folk music around that time, blues, country blues, and ragtime, and all this other kinds of music too. So what shows up in my songs is a kind of melange of all of these things.
Incredible. You did mention so many different genres, and you had this early musical sensibility, wherein you listen to everything ranging from jazz to folk, and uh, very very interesting. Like I just stumbled upon a very interesting video on the internet. There's a very popular video of you jamming with the legendary Ali Farka Touré in the
Mm.
River of Sand film, right? So, what were some
Hmm.
of the interesting sights and exchanges during the encounter you had with him?
It was a chance encounter because I was in Timbuktu with a film crew,
Okay,
uh, and we were making a film for Canadian TV
hmm,
about desertification,
all right,
which is a big problem in many parts of the world, but especially along the southern edge of the Sahara, where the desert is spreading southward as time goes on. So we were there filming that, and we happened to be in Timbuktu at the same time as an American uh, organization called Afropop
okay,
that promotes all kinds of African and other related music in the United States. Had a little tour
hmm,
visiting Timbuktu, and Ali Farka was going to play for this group of Americans.
okay,
So and we were there, so we got invited to sit in, and he was providing them with dinner as well, which
hmm,
consisted mostly of two sheep. And he brought the two sheep and showed them off to everyone, and then they took them out behind the hotel and killed them and cooked them. And we got to eat a meal, and then when he was performing, he asked me to come up on stage with him and play. So I did, and it was great fun. Except he kept saying, because we didn't have a lot of language in common.
hmm,
He speaks French, but my French isn't very good,
okay,
and I don't speak the whatever his Malian language is. But uh, but I played a song with him, and he said, "Oh, you must play another." So I played another one with him.
hmm,
And he kept. Then I didn't know how to leave the stage. It was like I didn't want to offend him by leaving, and I didn't want to offend him by staying. So I just stayed, but it was the wrong choice. So it ended up being uncomfortable at the end. But he was quite unhappy actually. But I just sort of didn't know what to do about that. But he was an incredible songwriter and guitarist.
right. Very very interesting. Like you are someone who has tried addressing environmental issues through your music, and you went there for a cause, right? You'd put out If a Tree Falls, and you recently put out To Keep the World We Know from your new
Mhm.
release, right? So what impact were you hoping with the message you are trying to put out through the music, and what are your hopes and aspirations for the future of environmental activism and the global response to climate change? So I'd like to hear your point of view.
Thank you. Yeah, well, songs. I write the songs because I'm emotionally affected by something,
Hmm,
and if the effect is strong enough and the circumstances are right, a song will come out of that. So if a tree falls as a result of that,
right.
other other songs I've written that have an environmental component to them similarly, and uh, to keep the world we know came about a little bit differently because it was a product of a collaborative effort with me and a Inuit Canadian singer songwriter named Susan Glukark.
Right.
And Susan approached me about the idea of writing a song, and she wanted to write a song about all the fires that were happening everywhere in the world. So it was more intentional than usual for me to approach this like, okay, well, how do we take this on? And we worked on it by means of emails and phone calls, and we came up with the song, which I'm quite happy with. I think it came out well. But what do you expect? What do we expect that song to do? I'm not so sure. I don't think songs by themselves do much of anything. But if there's a body of popular feeling around an issue, then the song can become a kind of anthem or rallying cry for that popular feeling. And hopefully, there's enough people who are concerned about climate change that there would be people who find some reassurance or encouragement, let's say, is a better word, in a song like that. That's about as much as I can offer through songs. I mean, there's other ways of addressing these things, but it comes down to politics and money all the time, and the people who are in the best position to influence the politicians and the money people are people who deal with them all the time, which is not me. But it can be. I can hope that if we keep encouraging that body popular feeling, that will be affected, or that will affect the choices of the politicians, and that's about the best we can hope for, I think, as normal people, who are not directly involved.
Yeah, certainly. As you rightly said, the pandemic and a lot of occurrences or a lot of circumstances kind of made us realize that we've been neglecting the whole aspect of environment. Right, environment has been depleting at a very rapid rate because of us, because of our own actions, right? But
Yeah,
what I see is there are a lot of organizations right now in different parts of the world which are working towards making a better environment, right? Like in India, we're having a lot of vehicles in parts of Delhi and other parts of India where
hmm,
they're trying to cut down on the pollution, right? They're trying to cut down on the unwanted resources, right?
right.
And of course, other parts of Asia also that I've heard of, Japan, China, they've been doing a lot of interesting stuff to protect the environment. So I see that people are sort of working towards it lately. Yeah.
I think there's a growing consciousness in the world of the need to work
Yeah.
on this. It also meets with resistance because there are.
Yeah.
I don't know about the situation in India, but certainly in North America, there are people who deny
Yeah.
that there is such a thing as climate change, or that it's caused by people's activity.
Actions.
I,
Yeah.
but so we have to overcome that resistance, or get around it. But it really comes down to a difficult choice between economic prosperity,
Yeah.
as we imagine it to be, and and a sane approach to keeping the global systems, environmental systems, going that give us life. So it is a difficult choice because when you get down to specifics, okay, well, we shouldn't put that nuclear reactor there, or we shouldn't put a waste incinerator here, or we shouldn't do this mining operation, or whatever. Uh, there's always people's jobs involved, and people don't want to lose their jobs, or they don't have a job and they need one, and you have to have to work that out somehow. So it's complicated, and it requires imagination and will on the part of
Yeah.
the decision makers. So I guess we have to keep kind of prompting the decision makers to be thinking along the right lines.
Yeah, that's where prolific artists like you come into the picture, where you kind of try to spread awareness through the music and make people understand what's going on. Right, you communicate through your music, so which is truly incredible. Yeah.
Well, we hope so.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
So I'd like to understand as to a specific approach or strategy that you had in mind while creating your gold and platinum willing albums, some of them being Stealing Fire, Dancing in the Dragon's Jaws? If yes, I'd like to understand how was the strategy different from that time to your latest release, Osano Moon?
I don't think the strategy is very different. I have to temper that by saying that I'm really not the one who does the strategizing.
Yeah.
That my manager Bernie Finkelstein and the record companies that like True North Records,
Okay.
um, they're more involved in the actual strategizing than I am. But
Okay.
for me, the what I've always done is write the songs that come to me
Mm-hmm.
and try to make them as good as I can. And when I have enough of them to make an album, then I go make an album. It changes over time because, um, according to my own feelings, toward the end of the '70s, my first album came out in 1970, and
Okay.
I made 10 albums, basically an album a year during that period.
Right.
By the end of the decade, I was really kind of tired of my own company on stage. I wanted to have a band. I wanted to have drums. I wanted to play more electric guitar, and so the songs started taking that kind of shape. So then
Right.
through the '80s and into the '90s, it was that was kind of my own direction musically. But then after a while, it was like, okay, well, I wanted to get the other element, that sort of quieter, more thoughtful, if that's the word for it, '70s feeling back into the music.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of the '90s and since then, it's kind of gone more that way. But with Osano Moon, um, it's not really a band playing on the record, but there's a lot of other musicians on it that
Yeah.
I contributed beautifully to what we ended up with. Um, and that those decisions are made between me and the whoever's producing the album. In this case, my friend Colin Linden, who has produced my last dozen or so records, I guess. Um, I've had other producers in the past, and I've had good relationships with all of them, where we'll just toss ideas around and sort of, how do we want this music to sound? If we have a song that sounds like it could get on the radio, if it's the right type of song,
Mm-hmm.
then we'll pay attention to that and we'll try to make the record sound like something a radio station might want to play. But that's about as deep as I get into strategizing. It's
Right.
like,
Right.
and then after that, it's up to the people who are more attuned to the business side of things.
So, from what I gather, your process involves art, pure art, right? You don't really pay attention to how it's going to perform in terms of commercial success or how are people going to receive it. It's just working on music with an idea and processing it and putting it out. And your
Yeah, I
management
mean,
takes that forward. Yeah.
yeah, I think of the audience when I'm writing the song,
Right.
because I want to make it something they can understand,
Correct.
and I want it to be something that people will feel means something to them.
Right.
So I do pay attention to how it will be received in that sense, but not in commercial terms. It's yeah, it's not just not on my radar really. I'm aware of all that, and I pay attention to the
Mhm.
choices that are being made, and I you know I have a say in it. I can say no, I don't want to do this, or yes, I think this is a good idea. But I'm not the one coming up with the commercial ideas. But I think, I mean, the whole point of the song of a song is to share experience in some way, right? So the things that touch me in my life are very often going to be the things that touch other people in their lives too, because we all are pretty similar to each other. And so, when I'm writing a song, I'm thinking of, like, how can I make this meaningful to the person who's going to hear it? But that's as far as it goes.
Marvelous. I love the intent.
Yeah,
It's pure music, pure art, and I really appreciate that.
thank you.
Let's talk about your new release in particular. Could you delve deeper into the symbolism and emotional resonance of the song "Colin Went Down the Water"? So I'm sure it has a little bit of its exploration of loss and tragedy. So could you
Hmm.
throw some light on that? Yeah.
Yes. Um, 2 summers ago,
Uh huh.
uh, my family and I and a couple of friends rented a house for the most of the month of July in Maui, in Hawaii.
Okay.
And,
Wow.
and
Okay.
it's a beautiful, we've been there before. We love being there.
Uh huh.
And it was a very quiet setting and a very comfortable group of people. And as it, as usual, I was the first one awake every morning, and
Uh
I
huh.
would go out and sit on the front porch of the house and play my guitar. And for some reason, a whole bunch of songs came during that period of a few weeks. Uh, One of them was Colin Went Down to the Water, and that one came about unfortunately because a friend of ours who was living in Maui at the
Hmm.
time
Hmm.
um, drowned in a scuba diving accident.
Oh no.
And
Okay.
while we were there, and it was quite shocking because I had made a plan with him to get together in a few days and have a drink and say hi. But then he drowned, so the song came out of that. But the setting is this beautiful setting, tropical. I mean, speaking to somebody in India, you're very familiar with tropical settings, but for me, it's an exotic situation to find myself in.
Right.
And it's I could sit on the front porch, and there's the stand of bamboo swaying in the wind, and there's wild chickens roaming around, as is common. Chickens and goats roam all over the place in Maui, uh, and I can see the sea not too far away, uh, and it's that same beautiful setting, and that I wrote about in other songs, like Into the Now, for instance, on the same album. Uh, Except that sea that I now includes my friend Colin, and so not this is not Colin Linden who produced the album. We got to make that clear. Two different people,
Okay.
but
Okay.
yeah, Colin Pierce was the other gentleman's name. So it was very poignant and sad, and that produced the song.
Incredible. I just love your the imagination in you. The way you describe different elements and the setting. It's just it's marvelous the way you can visualize these things.
Yeah, thanks. I relate to things visually a lot,
Okay. Okay.
uh, and a lot of the word writing that I do
Right.
is an attempt to to paint a visual picture that people can see. So I'm glad that works for you.
Yeah. 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 Because I'm someone who really loves the sense of aesthetics that people have, especially musicians, right? So different musicians I've been interacting with, each of them are very distinct with their distinctive voices and the way they visualize all of these things. It's truly, truly marvelous to see that aspect. Yeah,
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, what deeper existential reflections does the song "When You Arrive" from your latest album evoke through its contemplation of aging, mortality, and the acceptance of one's own physical limitations?
I would say that's exactly what it is. It's um, a product of my own age, and
Hmm.
I suppose the having to deal with COVID
Yeah,
too. I mean,
yeah,
but we all started thinking more about our mortality. I think
right, right,
what our age is. But
yeah,
when my age, I mean, I'm 78. The horizon is closer than it was,
yeah,
at least in my consciousness. It's closer than it was when I was
right,
50 or 30.
right,
So it's kind of more, not in a bad way either. I mean, it's a threshold we have to cross. Everyone has to cross it, and
yeah,
that, I have some apprehension about it, but I also look forward to whatever the next thing is. So the song is kind of a celebration of that, I think. And it's certainly recognizing mortality, and in an imminent way, but it's not a sad song. I don't think it's, I mean, it's also your bodies fail when they get, over time, right?
Right.
Some people are luckier than others,
Yeah.
and in spite of the fact that I have some physical problems, I think I'm one of the lucky ones, because I'm still able to function at the age I'm at, and that's not true for everybody. But anyway, so that whole idea is a big part of everything on the album, really. I mean, on a roll, it's the same kind of thing, and when the spirit walks in the room is maybe not so much like that, but just trying to think about it. But to me, there's a lot of death in the album, but it's not. I don't think of it in a mournful way, except for Colin Went Down to the Water, which is somebody else's death.
Right. But I'm really hoping that you do health wise, uh, you know, as best as possible, and
Thank you.
you put out many more musical masterpieces for the next 50 years more, or
I'll
70
take it.
70 years more.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Let's take a step back now. Let's go back in time. We'll go through this whole nostalgic phase wherein I'm going to ask you some questions about some of your older releases. So, in Pacing the Cage, right?
Mhm.
If you remember, you
Yeah.
incorporate the drone based technique, right? So, how did you draw inspiration from Mississippi John Hurt and blues music in general to develop techniques such as this? And in your opinion, how does the use of vivid imagery and intricate wordplay enhance the impact and longevity of a particular song, such as this?
That's a lot of angles to that.
Yeah.
But with respect to the guitar part,
Mhm.
uh, I became a fan of Mississippi John Hurt and certain other, Mance Lipscomb, Brownie McGee, and Sonny Terry. I heard them a lot when I was young,
Yeah.
and I mean, from my late teens onward. And I was very much influenced as a guitar player by that music, as a fingerstyle player.
Okay.
I had already listened to a lot of jazz before I got introduced to that, and I was a fan of jazz guitar players. But
Right.
but the music I felt most like I could actually do that,
Uh
or
huh.
something like it, was that country blues fingerstyle guitar.
Okay.
So that um, I my own style developed out of a mixture of kind of the jazz that I was learning, and what I've described elsewhere as a failed attempt to imitate Mississippi John Hurt and certain other Bill Brunzi and certain other players.
Right.
Um, I never could quite get the feel, but in the process of trying, I came up with things that I could do that worked,
Uh-huh.
and so really, if you were to watch me play, you'd see my left hand doing a lot of things that a jazz guitar player might do,
Hmm.
uh, and the right hand is doing what the folk blues guys did, or
Right.
something like. I mean, neither of those things is exactly true, but it's close. So so the Pacing the Cage is very much in the style of Mississippi John Hurt, with an alternating bass that your thumb plays, and then
Correct.
uh, chords and or melody over the top of that, played with your fingers. And it seemed to suit when I come up with music for a song. It's determined by the feel of the lyrics. The lyrics are always the first thing. that come, and then it's like, okay, well, what kind of music do these lyrics want? Do they want rock and roll? Do they want something quieter and more reflective? Do they want, what kind of landscape am I going to put these lyrics in? And Pacing the Cage wanted to me that kind of music. It's become one of the more popular songs, and it actually is a song I'm going to have to not relearn, but rewrite the guitar part, because I have arthritic fingers, and there's certain things they won't do. I'm still able to play a lot. I play all the time, and there's most of my songs I can play without problem, but there's certain ones, and Pacing the Cage is one of them, that I can't really play very well anymore. So I got to think of a new guitar part for it that has the same feel, which I haven't been able to do yet. But that's a work in progress. The lyrics came from one day I was driving. At the time, I wrote the song. I was living on a horse farm west of Toronto in Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
And we were my then girlfriend was training show jumpers, so we had a small barn with a few horses and a ring, and behind the farm was a cliff. It's a geographical feature called the Niagara Escarpment that runs for 100 or so miles through part of Ontario, and we could see this maybe a mile, or whatever, let's say 2 kilometers behind us, and I was driving. I'd been in Toronto for the afternoon, and it was evening, and I was driving back to the farm. I drove up the road, and as I was approaching the entrance to our place, the sun was setting behind the Niagara Escarpment, and the cloud formations and the light it just looked to me like an angel weeping, but the kind of angel that we, for people who've read the Bible, there's certain angelic appearances in the Bible where they're armed, and they're not something to trifle with at all. They're not friendly always. Sometimes they're very harsh. So, and this one didn't look harsh, but it looked sad, but it was holding out this sword, and the image just came to mind, and I started writing, and the song unfolded from that. So, and it's a song to me, about being confined, but confined by your own choices. Sometimes you choose things, and you end up in a place that doesn't feel that good, and that's really what the song is about.
Well, I hope you're in a better place now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I am. Yeah, definitely. Still, people like the song, though. I think, I mean, that kind of feeling is one that comes and goes from all of our lives, at different times, I think.
Right.
It could be because you're bored with your job, or it could be because you're stuck in a marriage you don't like, or it could be, just you're frustrated with your own limitations. So we all experience these things.
Let's delve into the depths of spiritual and existential themes within your music. So, have you experienced a transformative impact on your own set of personal beliefs, or the lens through which you perceive the world?
It's an ongoing journey for me. I became aware in my late teens, that there was more to life than just the physical. Growing up, I'd been taught the surface of Christianity, let's say, but it was not presented to me as something that I needed to experience personally. It's just something people did, and we were supposed to worship this or that. But in my late teens, I became aware that there was another side to reality than the physical, and I thought that was worth exploring and paying attention to. And I went through different phases. I would say I flirted with Buddhism, with the occult, uh, with various philosophies, and eventually came back around to by choice, and partly at least, and partly by what I feel was uh, being led to approaching spirituality in Christian terms. But I've never felt like Christian terms were the only ones possible. I think that what's important is that we honor the hunger that we have for a relationship with the divine.
Yeah.
How we manifest that is going to be determined by our culture, by our personal experience and our own inclinations. And I think all of it is worthy. Well, almost all of it. I'm not a fan of the satanic stuff, but I think all of the major religions have much to offer in that respect, and
Yeah.
it's really about the relationship, the personal relationship, than more than anything.
Very, very beautifully articulated. Of course, like everyone's got like faith in a specific religion, and I'm sure our ancestors have imbibed this entire tradition to us for a reason, right? So they saw something their forefathers had probably told them, or had given them as part of their entire lineage, right? They say,
Yeah, I mean, all human cultures are limited in their capacity to communicate this kind of stuff to us as individuals.
yeah,
Western culture has its limitations.
right,
Asian cultures have their limitations. African and so on. But all of us have something to offer each other, I think, in that regard, and uh, uh, that can help us transcend those limitations.
yeah,
So uh, I think it's unfortunate if religion becomes uh, too closely identified with cultural norms, and it gets confusing for people, and it breeds bad things most of the time. But I think if we're able to approach the whole thing with the understanding that none of us really knows. It's we know what we learned from our parents, or as you said, from our ancestors,
yeah.
and we know from you know just from observing other cultures too that there are things to be learned. But I think too often people are motivated by fear to cling to the surface of what they've been taught, and not be open to other people's experiences and ideas. And I think we need to. I think that kind of fear is one of the biggest obstacles that faces our species. Not that impacts not just spirituality, but our understanding of the environment, I mean, it's fear of not having jobs as a part of that environmental picture, fear of having to learn something new that's different from the traditions we were taught, uh, fear of change itself. All these things. We need to find a way to get past that fear. And for me, a lot of that, for me, what that means is uh, understanding my own relationship with God more, and in a deeper and deeper way.
Okay.
The more of that, the stronger that relationship is, the less there is to fear. So that's my take on it, anyway.
Incredible. Incredible. I mean, talking about your music, you've been putting out incredible music for so many years now, right? So, do you believe that the music has this timeless quality, or do you feel that each each song that you put out through several eras Is it time bound? Is your music time bound, or is it, you know, I'm sure it's come through several phases, right? So do you believe that there's this timeless quality to survive?
Well, I would certainly like to believe that.
Mhm.
I'm not sure it's true, but uh, the I think that if you look in the short term, fashion rules a lot, right? So
Yeah.
in the '80s, I got played on the radio. In the 2000s, I don't get as much airplay because other stuff is more fashionable. But over time, over a long time, if I think about artists like um, we could, well, people who recorded, like, well, for instance, the old blues guys, they were never very popular outside their own community,
Right.
but then and they're operating in the 20s. But then 40 years later, a bunch of kids in the 60s discovered that music,
Yeah.
and the music became very alive again for those
Right.
people. So I can hope for something like that with my own music. But it's just a hope. I won't be around to check on it. But I
So,
always, of course, I think everybody who creates anything likes to think that it will last a long time and still have meaning for people in future generations.
right. Your music is quite diverse, right? It's got so many different layers, right? So you write music with strong messages. So have you encountered any resistance or backlash for addressing sensitive topics in your music? And how did you go about navigating those challenges as an artist, if that happened?
Um, I've experienced that to a limited degree. I've never. I don't feel like it's ever been a very large problem.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, there are people who take exception to anything political showing up in songs, and they don't want to hear it. Okay, that's fine. They don't have to listen.
Right.
But um, I think for me the whole job is to tell the truth as I understand it about the things that touch me emotionally, and so that's what I do. And some people like that, and some people don't. Some people like aspects of it and not others, and so it goes. I mean, but I don't think I've been the victim of any real serious backlash. There are I've heard people say that I'm anti-American or something. I'm actually not anti-American at all. I live in the United States. I think it's a great place, but 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 I'm anti certain policies
Yeah.
of both the Canadian government and the American government, and many other governments that I have opinions about. So I think that's okay and fair. And if they turn up in songs, if those opinions turn up in songs, then fine. And if you don't like it, too bad.
Competition is something that's inevitable, right? You must have had, of course, you must have had a lot of competition in your area, which is music, right? And in your realm of music, did you have healthy competition with other fellow artists? And if yes, could you name a few of them?
I've never really thought in terms of competition. I mean, I know people do,
Uh huh.
and certainly it's a major part of the business. How many plays did you get, and how many hits, and on this and that and the other thing. But I've always been hesitant to see any art in terms of competition. Competition comes in when you're trying to get an audience, or in a healthier way when you're trying to be the best you can be, and somebody else. I mean, there's lots of guitar players in the world that are better than me. I listen to those guitar players and I go, yeah, I want to be able to do that too. It motivates me to keep working on developing my own way of playing. But um, and that's healthy. But to sort of feel like you have to uh, kind of trample over other people, or to feel like that you've been trampled on because somebody else is doing better. I mean, I'm not in that game. I think each of us has our own things to offer. I mean, Do I get jealous sometimes? Yeah, sure. If I hear somebody who's doing something similar to what I do that's got a bigger audience, I think, gee, it'd be nice if I had that bigger audience, but not to the point of feeling like I have to fight for it,
Yeah,
or to disparage the other person because they have it. So
fair enough. Your musical journey has taken you to various corners of the world where you might have witnessed the triumphs and struggles of humanity, right? So, how has immersing yourself in different cultural setups and environments influenced your artistic perspective and in the ways you try to, convey the universal human experience through your music?
it's a complicated question in a way, but the simplest answer is it's just been an ongoing education,
Yeah.
uh, and heart opening. I mean, this is which I think is part of education too, because you've if I hadn't done the traveling I've done, I probably wouldn't have the same ability to empathize with all people that I feel
Okay.
like I do have. I mean, people's stupid actions can make me angry or disappointed or upset, frightened, whatever, just like everybody. But I think that in the travels that I've done, in seeing how other people live, sometimes because they're forced to. In the case of places where people are very poor and have limited options, and I feel uh, I've learned a lot from people in that kind of situation about what it is to be a person, and what are the essentials. I mean, if you're in a society that has nothing, quote unquote, by comparison to the one I grew up in, you see that people they still have a lot of the same impulses and concerns, including noble ones, that and in some cases a better take on those things than people who grow up in rich countries might have. So there's been a lot to learn all the way around, and learning that people, even in the most horrible situations, are capable of love and of honorable behavior, and it's it's not like the ideas were new when I was introduced to them. They're things you think of, but to see these things made manifest in the flesh is very encouraging and kind of reinforcing of my own hopes, I'd say.
Have you ever visited India during your travels?
Briefly,
Okay,
I,
okay.
I
Tell
was
me about
in
it.
the first time I went to Nepal. I've been to Nepal twice. The first time was
Okay,
in 87,
okay.
1987, and we went in. We flew from Toronto to London to Delhi, and
Oh
then
wow.
to Kathmandu. So I had a 2-day layover in Delhi in each direction.
Hmm.
Uh, but that's all I've seen of India. I mean, Nepal has a lot in common with at least parts of India, but I can't say I know India at all. I have friends who've done a lot of traveling in India that love it, that have had great experiences. My brother traveled a lot in India back in the 70s, and really had a good time, or at least a valuable time, a worthwhile time. Too. So maybe one day if I live long enough, I'll
No, you,
get to more.
you should come to India. I'd be happy to host you in my country, and I'd be happy to show you around. Yeah,
Appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah. You should get your entire family, and I'll take you on a nice expedition. If you like food, we can try different cuisines. We can try different musical styles in India. We can also explore a lot of different cultures, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm knowledgeable about these things, but I've certainly eaten my share of Indian food in other parts of the world, and
Okay.
uh, listened, especially in the '60s when I was kind of '60s and early '70s when I was consciously exploring the music of other cultures. I listen to a fair amount of Indian music. Most, well, I mean, Ravi Shankar came to North America and introduced Indian music to us all.
Yeah.
But there was a sarod player named Ali Khan,
Ali Akbar
who
Khan, yeah.
made beautiful records back in the day.
Right.
And those were quite influential on me, actually, in terms of in very technical terms, really, the whole idea of music consisting of, if I can put it this way, short-term events that happen over top of a drone. This is, which is to me characteristic of Indian music. I mean, they can be longer-term events too, I guess, because some of the pieces are quite long. But a lot of my stuff is built on that principle.
Right.
A lot of my approach to the guitar is based on that. So whether it's an alternating bass or just a single note, it's something that those country blues players did as a principle. Also, very different style, different technique required. But so I mean, I have at least a sort of aesthetic connection with India in that, to that extent. But I see pictures and I think, man, it would be really great to see that face to face, you know. But maybe I'll get to take you up on your invitation one day.
Yeah, you should come. You should totally come. In a world filled with noise and distractions, your music has managed to captivate and connect with audiences in a very profound level. So, how do you navigate the delicate balance between authenticity and accessibility in your songwriting, allowing listeners to form a very personal connection with your music while staying true to your own artistic vision at the same time?
I don't think about it too much, actually. I just do what I do, you know, I don't tend to measure myself against other people much. I mean, once in a while, like I said, I get jealous over something or whatever, but it's temporary and shallow. Uh, I really feel like I'm on my own road, and I just need to pay attention to what the next step is supposed to be. Which I mean, I have that attitude about my entire life, and the music is an expression of that. So I don't, you know, I don't have to work at that, really.
Right, right. I mean, it leads to my follow up question. Your career would have faced moments of, doubt and uncertainty, right? Through different phases. So, both creatively and in your advocacy efforts, right? So, how have these challenging types shaped your growth as an artist? And what are some of the insights or personal revelations that you have gained from overcoming all of those obstacles in your way?
Well, I don't know if my insight into that is very different from other people's. Each of us has physical obstacles. I mean, I was born with uh, I was very lucky, but born with a condition called spina bifida, which is uh, can be crippling, and most people who experience it die young in a wheelchair. I
Oh,
did
no.
not, because the version of that condition that I have is very minor, relatively speaking. But over time, it's affected me. But what it did do in the beginning is it gave me a bad. One leg was shorter than the other, and I was very self-conscious about that when I was a kid. So, you know, what do you do about that? Well, I didn't like to play sports because I felt like I wasn't good at sports. Because I didn't like to play sports, I I I took up music, I think. I mean, I didn't,
Mhm.
not consciously. I didn't say, "Oh, I don't want to play football. I'm going to play the guitar." But it just worked like that.
Right.
So, for instance, and this is a way of moving past a perceived limitation to doing something that doesn't depend on the same things at all. So, you know, my hands were perfectly agile. I could do things with those. And um, I think all of us experience these kinds of things in our lives where, you're not as beautiful as somebody else, or you're a product of a situation where there are limitations around you in terms of the work you can do, or in terms of the education you can get, and all that sort of stuff. And everybody has to get past those things. Some people do it by, kind of taking a sledgehammer approach, and with motivated by extreme ambition or something, and they want to dominate and they want to get, I never felt like I had to do that. Partly because I grew up in a comfortable middle class North American household where I never really had to want for anything. So we weren't spoiled, but we had everything we needed. So I grew up thinking a lot that I would always have whatever I needed, and so that's I consider that a good thing, but I'm very aware that not everybody gets to do that. Like a lot of people in the world grow up with the feeling that they'll never get what they want or what they need, and they have to fight for it. So these are the kinds of things that shape us. And for me, once I discovered music, it was a way out of any other limitations that I might feel socially or physically or whatever. Here was something that was just a relationship that I had with sound and the kinds of imaginary space that the sounds create in your mind. And I love that, and still do. And then it went on to, my understanding went on from that to thinking that the divine is out there in that space. And I wouldn't say music led me directly to that, but they're related in a certain way. So all of these things, and kind of went to making me who I am, and the rest of it has just been trying to honor that with what I do in my life, and also to be helpful in some way if I can.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, apart from being such an incredible musician, you're also a wonderful human being. And from what I
You
gather,
can say that at a distance. You're safe saying that. Sorry,
right,
I mean to
that's
interrupt you.
right, right. So, I mean, yeah, it's incredible. The way that you kind of try to balance out time for a different set of things. Like you are also a philanthropist, and yeah, you make great music, and of course, you are also a family man. You take care of your family and your responsibilities, which is truly, truly something to look forward to for any musician, right? To pave their musical pursuit.
Well, I think you have to have a life. You can't. It can't only be music.
Yeah.
Then you're not going to kind of. I guess. I mean, I say that for me. Other people might feel differently, but for me, it's the music is part of. It has to be part of a whole life.
Nice. I'd like to come to the last part of our agenda today, which is a very interesting segment. It's called the rapid fire segment. And I'm going to be asking you some very simple questions, and let's see how you do in the rapid fire segment. Right. So, first question for you, Bruce. What is that one song that always makes you cry?
Rapid fire may not be my forte here. Yeah, actually, there's a Tom Waits song called I'm gonna take it with me when I go,"
Hmm.
that pretty much always does that.
All right. On the contrary, what is your favorite guilty pleasure song?
Um, I think "God Save the Queen" by the Sex Pistols.
Great choice. If you had the chance to put together an all-star indie folk band, who'd be in it? You can pick an artist from any era. Yeah.
Yeah, there'd be thousands of it. Would be a very large band. But there'd be some Irish musicians, and there'd be some Indian musicians, and there'd be some Turkish musicians, and there'd be uh, some banjo players, and and accordion players, and but it's hard to name names, But and it would be at least 50-50 male and female,
Right.
because I like the sensibility that women in general bring to things. I find that easy to work with. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I don't have a very simple answer for that one.
Okay. Okay. What is your favorite cuisine?
Uh, the stuff I make at home. I mean, basically what I grew up with, which is standard meat and potatoes kind of diet.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to eat potatoes anymore, so so I eat meat and rice. But I'm not a vegetarian. I like a lot of different kinds of food, actually, but I like what I cook myself best.
Okay. Okay. What are the top five qualities or the must-haves for a singer-songwriter to get started with their musical pursuit?
Well, the general things, you have to have an imagination.
Hmm.
You have to have some musical ability,
Hmm.
and you have to. Well, that's the most basic starting point.
Uh-huh.
But the, the the other parts of that answer would change over time, I think, but I think that you need to have some integrity, and I think you need to maintain some degree of control over what you do. Sometimes artists think that the business people know more than they do, and that they should be guided by choices that really aren't about the art. And those things are useful in their way, but they have to be kept in their place. So you've got to keep a distance from that. Um, I mean, commitment is another one. So I think that's five. Was it? Maybe.
You're doing pretty well. Right. I have one last question for you, which is a custom in all of my interviews, and I ask all of my guests this very question. So here's a question, Bruce. Down in the distant horizon, what would you like to be remembered as?
uh, Either as absolutely nothing,
Uh-huh.
or as and probably this preferred one is as somebody who did their best to to with who did their best with respect to the art, and who gave something to the world in some way. Um, I'm I don't want to be more specific than that, because I have no control over that. I don't know what people will take out of what I've done, but I hope it will be a good thing.
Great answer for a closure. This interview will be additionally aired on Indian radio on Big FM Shillong and Aizol, which are in the northeastern parts of India, on the Sunday primetime show between
Great.
5 to 6 p.m. And I'll be happy to share the posters once it is going to be aired. And not just that, this interview is going to be on my YouTube channel, Aditya Veera, very soon. And it'll be streaming on all major audio streaming platforms that include Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, name it. So I'll be sure to share the link once this interview is out. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been an incredible blessing, honor, and a privilege, sir.
I thank you in return, and you've been asking really good questions, and it's been very enjoyable talking with you. So thank you.
I'm glad. I'm glad it was worth waking up at this early hour and doing
Uh,
this. And yeah, of course, like I also had to sort of trouble you with figuring out the Zoom session and everything, but I'm so glad it worked well at the end of the day.
Yes, me too.
I hope to stay in touch with you. Please do stay in touch, and I'd be happy to share some Indian music with you as well.
That'd be great. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Take care. Take care. Have a great Sunday. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.